So, in the last chapter review, one of the things that we found out is that Luffy has made it to the island that the Navy has a base on, and he's made contact with the pirate hunter Zoro. And just as a small reminder, when I was recording these reviews for One Piece from chapter 1, I didn't know that Zoro's name had been changed to Zolo in the Viz manga. So, I asked you to bear with me because I didn't find out about this until after I got done recording the stuff for volume 2. So with that being said, let's just dive a little further into this chapter review and look at how Luffy is going to win Zoro over into his crew. So in One Piece chapter 4, we get quite a lot of information, at least in regards to how the Navy is operating on this island. So one of the things that we find out is that you have this Captain Morgan who is actually Helmeppo's father. And Captain Morgan, the reason why everyone is so scared of him is, for the most part, he's a psychopath, right? Like, one of the things he does is he kills one of his men for hesitating when it comes to one of his orders. And unlike Helmeppo, who decided one of the things that he wanted to do was spare the little girl because she was a child and she probably didn't know any better with helping the pirate hunter Zolo. Instead, Captain Morgan immediately says, find the girl and kill her, child or not. She needs to pay for what she's done. And so one of the things you're seeing is that there's an escalation. This is really good. This is really good to just see how the author of One Piece is taking the opportunity to not only set the foundation for the world, but also escalate it and then challenge our perception of what right and wrong is. Because Luffy is a pirate, and yet one of the things that we're seeing is that Luffy has actually a pretty decent morality about him. Whereas the Navy, you would think the Navy would be like the good guys, and they're actually behaving in a corrupt way. You got Captain Morgan, who wants tributes and parades and everything from all the people who are on this island, and he's killing people who disobey his orders. His son is walking around the island like he uses it and owns it. And even Captain Morgan says, I don't mind if you use my name and my status in order for you to get your way. But that's very interesting that he says that. Now, I get the whole part of he wants his son to kind of fight his own battles, or as he said, he wants him to wipe his own bottom. And yet at the same time, one of the things that kind of troubles me with that is we're clearly seeing someone who is abusing his power. He's someone who has gotten drunk off the power, and he's gone as far as to have a statue erected in his likeness. And apparently it's taken a while to build this statue, but when it comes to stuff like that, we have the lovable knuckleheaded idiot Luffy, who, like most shonen main characters, shows up and decides to kind of make his mark. And the way he does it is he's looking for a way inside of the Navy office that has Zoro's swords. And I'll touch on that in a moment, but Luffy's looking around and he's going, okay, well, I don't see anybody, but I hear voices up there. And he uses his devil fruit ability. He stretches his arms and kind of like a slingshot, he propels himself upwards. Well, the problem is Luffy's moving with so much force, he actually ends up breaking the statue. And if that isn't crazy enough, Helmeppo is looking, he says, well, father, that's the guy who basically kicked my ass. How about you take care of him too? And that's enough right there for Captain Morgan to officially want Luffy kind of taken down. He even says, bring me his heart. And the reason being is it isn't because he knocked his son around. Hell, Captain Morgan knocked the hell out of his own son simply because he thought that he was trying to use him, and he had to correct him. He had to say, look, you do understand that I'm the one in charge here. I have the rank. I'm the important one. And you start seeing a real hierarchy that is being developed here. And what I found very interesting is the fact that we see the vanity in one of the villains for One Piece. And by showing the vanity of one of these characters, what this actually does is it shows us that our perception of good and evil is going to be challenged in the One Piece series. And what I really like about that is when you see that little girl, kids are very much a litmus test. Kids can look and tell whether or not someone is good or bad, because their perception of things is very skewed. They don't understand that there's a gray area. You're either good or you're bad to a lot of children. And so all she knows is that since the Navy's been on this island, they've had to do tributes and they've had to have their way of life, for the most part, inconvenienced. And yet, Luffy was the one who tried to catch her when she was thrown over the fence. And Luffy is the one who is trying to help Zolo. And what I found very interesting about that is the fact that she says Zolo isn't a bad guy. And that's very interesting to me because, again, it shows you that she's been going over that fence more than once. And another thing I thought was pretty cool was the fact that Luffy didn't actually tell Zolo that he was going to make him part of his crew. Instead, what he says is that, hey, Luffy tells him he's gonna be part of my crew, but he doesn't tell him that, he's actually about to be executed. And one of the things he says is like, I've made my mind up, you're joining my crew. And that's the interesting thing. Zolo looks at him and says, I don't care if you made up your mind. I don't care if you made up your mind. You can't tell me to join your crew if I don't want to. And Luffy isn't having it. Luffy isn't having it. And what's very interesting about that is he says, well, look, if I get your swords, you'll have to join my crew, right? And Luffy's already negotiating. And that's actually the skill of a good leader. So I like what you see there. I like how Luffy is looking at the situation and he's seeing a problem. And the problem in this case is he really wants Zolo to join his crew, and yet he doesn't have anything to offer him. And so in this case, he can actually offer Zolo something. So I thought that was pretty cool in the sense that, he saw the swords, saw Zolo needed them, and said, yeah, you're gonna get help. I'm gonna help you out, buddy. Don't even worry about that. So here's the other thing I thought was pretty interesting. See, when Kobe is actually telling Zolo about Luffy's dream, he says, like, I want to be a good Navy man. It's like, okay, whatever. Like, you're fucking fodder. But the other thing that was pretty cool is the fact that, as he tells Zolo that Luffy wants to be king of the pirates, Zolo's just like, seriously, does this guy even know what that means? Does he know what he's basically saying? And you basically see Kobe get a hard on for Luffy, and he's saying that, at this point, Luffy is, showing improving right now. And what's interesting is as he is untying Zolo, Kobe actually gets shot in the back. And this is one of those things that I didn't like. I didn't like this because Kobe was just introduced to us. Now we have a situation where Kobe might be getting killed off because, Captain Morgan said, like, make sure you go down there and you kill them. And all of a sudden Kobe, his arms are stretched out. So it looks like Kobe took a bullet in the back, and it's all for saving Zolo. And one of the things I don't like about that is we have this character who is the opposite end of Luffy. Basically you have Luffy, who is very strong, very sure of himself, knows he wants to be king of the pirates. And then you have Kobe, who is very weak, is second guessing himself, and he wants to be a great Navy man. And it's just like it's the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And it'd be really cool to see Luffy inspire him to actually join the Navy. But I think this also opens up the door, if he isn't dead, for Kobe to actually join Luffy's crew, because he's seeing that the Navy isn't necessarily what he was looking for. And Kobe has some navigational skills, so he could be of use to Luffy. So I think that would be something kind of interesting going forward. But the other thing is that if he is dead, if he is being killed off, that is something I don't like, because when you kill off characters very early on in a story like this, you have to do it right. Their death has to mean something. If Kobe dies, what does his death mean? We haven't been around him long enough to actually care about him. We're starting to care about him, but it wouldn't be the same. It's almost like you have a really good dinner that's being cooked and you take it out the oven after 15 minutes. Well, you haven't fully cooked it yet, so you can't fully enjoy the meal. You could eat the meal, but you wouldn't be able to actually savor it in the ways you could if it was completely cooked. And that's the same thing here. You shouldn't kill off a character like Kobe unless his character has been fully fleshed out or he's made a significant enough impact on Luffy. So I want to ask you guys a question. Where do you think Zolo is going to end up falling in this whole dynamic between Luffy and Kobe? I think that at this point we're seeing something where Zolo is starting to somewhat come around to Luffy, though at the same time, I think he still has some hesitations about him. Because to Zolo, I mean, Luffy is pretty much an idiot. The guy's walking into a Navy base. He's taken the guy, Captain Morgan's son, hostage, and he's trying to get his swords. Even Zolo says this is such a stupid pirate, and he's somebody who's a pirate hunter, so he's probably encountered a lot of pirates, and yet that also tells me that Luffy's leaving an impact on him. So I want to know what your thoughts on Zolo was at this part in the series. But as always, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, share. Thank you so much for watching. Have an awesome day, guys.